chokwadi pasi pano taiona moto marongera vanoita wepanyika vanoda kudesu vamwe tioneswe moto dai pasina kupindira kwaishe.
The elephant in the room is political parties who are refusing or unwilling or slowly moving towards the constitutional provisions which allow for equal representation amongst genders. Now, there's been a push for a 50-50% representation in parliament across all decision-making areas, parliament, the executive, and councils. There's also been calls for political parties to conform to gender equality and gender parity. These provisions are there in the constitution. But instead what we have seen that there's a lethargy by political parties, by political actors and leaders who, instead of living to these provisions of the Constitution, have moved to instead further the 60 seats for women in parliament, increased the threshold, going down even to local authorities. Some say this is because men who control these political parties fear losing power, and they are using these clauses to pacify women. Now we're going to be discussing the situation right now in proud partnership with We Lead, an organization led by young women who are committed to seeing the fulfillment of constitutionalism in Zimbabwe, in proud partnership with Heart and Soul TV and radio, the alternative, the voice for everyone. Now join me just shortly after this break as we get in more into detail. Welcome back to the situation right now in proud partnership with We Lead. Now we're talking women, politics, power, and 2023. Now in studio, I'm joined by women politicians who have dared to go there, dared to get it, dared to be different, and not wait to be handed power like John's head. Now I'm joined by the Councillor for Harare, Kudzi. Thank you very much, Madam Councillor Sabuku Kumeburedi, for coming to Marlborough.
Thank you very much, Blessed.
I'm also joined by the President of Lead, Linda Masarira. Thank you very much for joining us.
You're very welcome.
And into the program, we're going to be joined by another guest, another politician who will be stepping in. But just let us kick the ball rolling. Now, I'll start with you, Madam President. You've got a political party, leading a political party. Maybe let's look at the issues that inform your political party is driven from the Constitution that have been failed by other political parties, rather.
Okay, thank you very much. Labour Economists and African Democrats is a party that was founded on the values of labour justice, because we're in a country where labor is looked down upon, where workers are just in some form of servitude, which they do not even understand, the workers themselves. It is also premised on the grounds to ensure that gender balance becomes a reality in our political economy in Zimbabwe. We are also pushed by the economic situation in our country, where we have seen most politicians across the political divide, from the ruling and other political parties in the opposition, they've got an appetite for primitive accumulation of wealth. And we saw this during the GNU era. And it is something that we could not ignore as a generation that was in its youth at that time, and where we found out that almost everyone was in the GNU, came out of the GNU, a very wealthy person, and they could not even account about how they managed to accumulate that wealth in a very short space of time. And we're also interested in coming up with a complete system overhaul, because we're a country that just adopted everything from the Smith regime, from the colonial era, the judicial system, the legal system, the education system, the governance system. Everything that we are still using to date, 42 years after independence, was inherited from the Smith regime, and there hasn't been sufficient political willpower to change all those systems, to come up with systems that work for Zimbabweans, that will ensure that the quality of lifestyle for Zimbabweans will actually be uplifted. So we are a party that is pushing for all those things over and above, and ensuring that we have equity in our society, and that our mineral resources will benefit the native Zimbabwean ahead of the foreign investors. And we have been working so hard to ensure that women actually get into real positions with tangible power. That is what we are working flatly to ensure, that we come up with a women's revolution, because we see that women can actually deliver when it comes to delivering the deliverables that can change and sustain livelihoods in Zimbabwe. What we have seen in Zimbabwe are fathers who are not responsible because they've run down the economy over the past 42 years. We have seen male leaders in both the ruling party and the opposition who have got a penchant appetite for womanizing, and who want to continue making more money and engaging in corrupt activities so that they will be entertaining women. And it is said that we also have a lot of these politicians living parallel lives, being a citizen of Zimbabwe and a citizen of another country, and having other wives in those countries, externalizing funds, etc., etc. So we believe that mothers can actually come to the fore and be able to deliver a better Zimbabwe, because women have never been given real positions of power to show their ability to lead and to turn around the society in every community in Zimbabwe.
Now, Kudzi, I want you to look at this post-2013 constitution and pre-2013 constitution, now the constitution of the country. How has it improved or made it easy for women to be involved in politics, and how your party has made use of that?
Well, Zimbabwe, we are well known for coming up with perfect documents. Implementation has always been our greatest weakness. As a party, we've got leaders that actually took part in the constitution making processes that happened in 2013. And, there were amendments that were done in that constitution. And I'll take you back to amendment number 20 of the constitution that, spoke about empowerment, women empowerment. It also spoke about women capacitation. It also spoke about protection of women and aligning, all these positions, to the gender 50-50. But when we come back to the ground, we see that, a lot has not been done. Just recently, Parliament passed, a quota system for the local authorities, 30%, and it was quite controversial, with other women organizations saying that, we don't want freebies. We want to be able to get into these positions because of capacity. It was a controversial decision, but then it was made. But as a party, we were far ahead of those processes. we launched what we call the Smart Gender Task Drive, which I'm a member of. I'm a member of that task force. And this basically was focusing on our party leadership, the women in our party, coming down from, the branches from, the lowest level of our structures, which is the branches, all the way up to the national level, making sure that there's alignment of the 50-50 gender, women empowerment structures in all those structures that we have as a party. We're just not focusing on the elected officials, but we're focusing on the structures themselves, because even when you go to structure level, you see that the chairperson, for example, of a district, most of the time when an election is coming up, people would rather second a man, but so we're trying to capacitate our women, capacitate, the young women, especially, to take up these roles, take up the leadership roles. And then for those that wanted to actually venture into the, into the elected political space, we've done numerous trainings on them. We've done mentorship programs, partnering them with women that are already there in the space, occupying these positions, to try and make sure that when 2023 comes, we're going to achieve the 50-50. It might not be achievable all at once, because it is a journey. I think if we hit the 40% mark, it will be an achievement. And this is what we have done.
Amazing. But I want us to look at the Constitution, Linda. Do you think we are respecting it as a country, as a government led by ZANU-PF? Do you see a respect for the Constitution?
What I've seen over the years is selective application of the Constitution. There's never been political will to ensure that the Constitution of Zimbabwe is adhered to in its totality. And when it comes to the subject at hand that we're discussing, I have not also seen any other political party except maybe LEAD trying to also to adhere to the tenets of the Constitution. Because as LEAD, we have made sure that Section 17 of the Constitution becomes a reality. We have ensured that all our structures are gender balanced. When we have participated in by-elections, we also made sure that we actually had a higher number of women participating in by-elections. So when we start speaking about respecting the Constitution, it is something that every political party in this country has to adhere to. I have said this in different platforms. I reiterate, I said this at the 2019 Gender Indaba, hosted by the Gender Commission at Peacock Hotel in Mutare, that we are supposed to shift to have electoral reforms to move from the Westminster first past the post-electoral system for the parliamentary and council elections and move over to the proportional representation system like the one that we are using in Senate. That is the only way we will be able to achieve gender balance in this country and to ensure that women will also be active participants in the governance issues of our country. Because what we have is a patriarchal dominant system in Zimbabwe. It is just not at a political level. It is even there socially, in our church, in almost at the workplace. We have got a system where the man is more revered than the woman, and the woman is not given that recognition that they can actually deliver in anything. And it is important for us to be able to come together as women across the political divide and come up with the decisions that benefit women before our political parties. The tragedy that we have is we are not united as women. We tend to want to look at what my particular political leader is doing at the expense of women's rights, at the expense of Section 17 of the Constitution, because women are given an illusion of power in their relevant political parties. That is why, as a party, we scrapped what is called the Women's League, though we were in our party we were calling it the Women's Council. But after further interrogation of how the Women's League in ZANU-PF, the Women's Assembly, the MDC or Triple C have failed to breed a gender-balanced political economy in the relevant parties, we realize that that is where the women are losing it. Because in those Women's League or Women's Council, they are given their own structure. But most of the things that are coming from these Women's League or Women's Assembly are just... it's just like an illusion of power, because they don't hold real power. The only person who goes to the Politburo or the standing committee is either just the chairperson of the Women's League or the Women's Assembly, or maybe the deputy in some cases. And you'll find that when we look at the Politburo or the standing committee of other political parties, they are always not gender balanced, because women will be told that you are being represented by a woman representative. These women's leagues or women assembly were actually created to suppress women, to keep them confused in that space, so that they don't realize their full potential and their full power. Considering that women constitute the bulk of the population in Zimbabwe, I don't understand why we have women's leagues or women's assemblies or women's whatever. We should actually be having men's councils or men's leagues, because they are in the minority when it comes to the population dividend. And I don't know why, to such a time, women still feel comfortable in gyrating and decorating venues for political functions at the expense of grabbing the real power. Look at every political establishment, except maybe political parties like ours, which is led by a woman. The women always occupy the deputy positions. And when they are given a substantive position, they always have a person who's managing them in that particular position, because they would have engineered their rise to that particular position. So we want to get to a stage where women realize their full potential, stand up, fight and campaign for them to have real tangible power, which they can stand on and base on and say, I am the one who's in control and I'm the one who is in charge. I'll go back to the gender indaba that I was speaking about. MDCT was represented by Dr. Thokozani Kupe then, ZANU-PF by Comrade Angeline Masuku. The Triple C now was represented by VP Lynette Kore, and I was representing LEAD. We all agreed at the gender indaba that would go back to our parties and push for the electoral reform, and then we would collectively go as women from the different political parties to the Constitutional Court and push for an electoral reform to move over from the first past the post to the PR system. But it ended there. We have since gone to different workshops hosted by different women's political organizations, and the other women will tell you that our political leaders said it can't be done. So as women, if we cannot interrogate the issue that the men are afraid of women leadership, we are not going anywhere as a party. And what I have decided at a personal level, in the interest of making sure that women will be able to participate as equals in political activities, I am going to take it up at the Constitutional Court on my own, because the Gender Commission itself, which we mandated to start doing this, has also failed to ensure that equality in electoral processes becomes a reality by pushing for this electoral reform. It is not a subject or an issue that is difficult, because we are already using the proportional representation system in our Senate. We just need to cascade it to parliamentary elections and council elections in our quest to achieve equality in Zimbabwe.
Amazing. Now, you have been given an illusion of power. Your political leaders are basic magicians who are selling this illusion to you.
I have to then disagree with that thought, because, you know, Triple C is a new party on the block. Linda spoke about our vice president, our champion vice president, Honorable Lynette Kore, being part of the gender indaba that they did. And she's actually our patron at the Smart Gender Task Force Drive. So to say that she actually didn't take the issues that you discussed and the resolutions that you passed at that indaba seriously is not correct, because she actually came back and we had a summit that we did at Triple C, you know, the Citizens Coalition for Change party led by Advocate Nelson Chamisa, where there were different stakeholders from different levels in our party. The national main leadership were there, the youths were there, the young women were there, you know, the women were also there, and we put our heads together. And we saw that, you know, as you said, Blessed, that this is the elephant in the room, the issues to do with gender equality. And we took it seriously. And this is something that we have been implementing for the past 8 months. So 2023, you will see that the composition of the candidates coming out from the Triple C party will reflect all the efforts that we have put in, you know, to try and capacitate women, to try and encourage women to take up these roles. You know, the politics of the past, you know, were set up in that way to make sure that women don't succeed. But we have been preaching a different type of agenda, to try and make sure that women take up this space. It is true that in most sectors, you see women taking up the deputy position, whether it's in the boardrooms, whether it's in churches, as she said, this has been the norm. But this is the time for us to correct the wrongs, to set a new agenda, to set a new trajectory. And women are the future, and we as a party are not fighting that. We are for it.
But I want to be a bit controversial here and play the devil's advocate, Kuzi. How do you assure meritocracy whilst balancing the issue of gender? Because some have said that this has resulted in people just pushing forward women, even if there's no merit, because the Constitution says so.
This is why I said that was the way of the past. In the future, we're talking about women who've got capacity to occupy these positions. This is why we've taken up the trainings, we've taken up the workshops, we've taken up the mentorship, route to make sure we capacitate those women. It is true that, in the past, when we were still MDC Alliance, there was always issues to do with seniority, in occupying these positions. Women that were invited on the big boys' table, would have first preference to occupy these positions. And, as Linda said, rightfully so, we would have men shadowing, these women. They actually didn't have full control of the positions that they occupied. But we are the new, and, we're based in how the citizens want the party to be run. And, the citizens believe in women leadership, and you will see it as we go forward.
Linda, I just want to pose the same question to you. When we do the proportional representation and stuff, or what assurances do we have that we would put quality? Because I spoke to Beatrice Mtetwa, and she said that the issues, like especially around Senate, around the 60 seats, have not really helped women, because when they do the first past when they do the proportional representation, there are men in political parties who have deliberately chosen the weaker women who will not challenge them and given them those posts.
Yes, like I have rightfully and continuously challenged the patronage system in our political parties in Zimbabwe, where political leaders will choose the weaker and the most loyal, who will do anything to get power. I think maybe that is one of the reasons why we've got a very weak parliament, very weak Senate. It's because of the caliber that is used to choose those who will represent the party. And if we really need to be serious about sustainable development in this country, every political party should change the criteria that they use to select their candidates. And it is unfortunate that most of the times when we hear about the incapacitated or the weaker being given positions or being forwarded to be PR MPs or to the Senate, it is usually looked at with gendered lenses. We have got many incompetent MPs and senators in parliament, male to be precise. But most of the times when we start discussing women issues, we start hearing the issues of capacity, level of education. It seems like there's this systematic undermining of women. Because sometimes I think we should also look at the natural capacity of organic intellectuals, because they also matter in the matrix of governance issues. I've always given an example of why maybe Madam Kadzombe should go and be a councillor in Mazoe, a farming community where she knows nothing about. It is only prudent to have a woman who's been in the farming community, who understands the challenges that are there and the developments that are needed there, even if she has got 2 O-levels or ZJC only. But if she understands the development that is needed in the area, why should she not be given the chance to represent the people there as a councillor? But we'll find that if we go to most of those farming communities or rural communities, you'll find someone living in the urban areas being a councillor in that particular area, because we want to be looking at what qualifications does that person have at the expense of the type of representation that a local in that particular area can actually offer. So what I think...
That is not even constitutional.
Yes. That is not constitutional, because in our constitution, for one to stand as a councillor, you just need to be 21 years of age, be a resident in that particular area. And it is the same for MP. It is the same for Senate, but Senate is 40 years. Because what we are saying is people should be able to choose a representative who they feel can represent their interests in that particular community, in that particular constituency, ward. And that is what is important.
So this is where I was coming from. This is where my question was coming from. That you talk about people being able to choose the representative that they want, is it? Yes. But you can't then do the same when you're doing proportional representation, because that representative will be chosen for you by a political party.
I can respond to that. Every political party has got ward structures, has got constituency structures, and they obviously have their people. And if we want to go the PR route, we always have the primary elections. They should allow people in the ward, in the constituency, to be able to hold primary elections and elect the representative that they want to go on the PR list. That is what is important. But going forward, if we're going to be using a proportional representation list, we would have to scrape away the constituencies, because the constituencies only work for first past the post. We'll be driving a development agenda which will be based on national issues. For example, if we take it down to local authority levels, if we're going to be coming to Harare, we have 29 councillors, right? How many? It's 29 MPs. I want to start with MPs. We've got 29 MPs. We're going to be having 29 MPs for Harare without constituencies. That will be forwarded to the PR list. But as a party, what we're advocating for the electoral reforms, we want the number of MPs to be slashed to 100. We don't need all the MPs that we've got. There are just too many for a very small country like Zimbabwe. We're also proposing for the complete scrapping of the Senate. It is a useless organ that we've got. We don't see the work that it is doing, because it is just replicating what is being done in the lower house. And I think these are serious electoral amendments that every right-thinking Zimbabwean should actually be thinking along. It is important for us to be able to say, why do we need so many MPs? Look at South Africa, how big their population is. They've got less than 350 MPs. But looking at the delimitation process that is going on, we had 270 MPs right now in our parliament. We're going to be having more than 350. And what do we need that for when we are about a population of about 15 million people? The MP seats, the senatorial seats are just being used to award loyalty to political parties, loyal partners in the looting machinery or whatever that they're doing. We don't need so many MPs and senators in this country.
Yeah, listen, on that one, you know, the PR MPs and even the PR councillors that are going to come through in 2023, if you see the impact that they have, you know, in those august houses, you'll see that it's minimal. You know, in council, we had special councillors before who did not have wards. So when they're sitting in the chambers, they're not even allowed to speak. You know, so at the end of the day, you've got ceremonial positions that won't have a say in the way things are supposed to be done. You look at Parliament, you see that, you know, the PR MPs are not even given an allocation of the CD fund. So what impact do they have to the communities? What impact do they have, you know, to the nation at large? As Linda said, you know, at times it becomes a looting expedition, you know, or a rewarding system, which I don't think it's necessary. This is why I think alignment of the Constitution to make sure that, you know, we've got 50-50 representation in council is what we should be pushing for instead of the, you know, the proportional representation. Because, you know, at the end of the day, even the fellow, you know, councillors and MPs will not even respect, you know, the proportional representation, because we know the backgrounds of where we're coming from. So we know the levels, you know, we know the history behind every person who's seconded to Parliament and will be seconded to council. So the level of respect will automatically not be there. If one was seconded because of, a romantic relationship or an alliance with a certain person already creates factions, and a discord, in those august houses. And this is something that I see, as a Zimbabwe, that it doesn't really have a place in Zimbabwe.
But how can we use the constitution to correct these things? I mean, these things are happening. Are we able to use constitutional provisions to make sure that as political parties, everyone comes to play and make sure that we have quality representation for Zimbabweans?
Of course, it's possible, because all we have to just do is make sure that on the day of nomination court, every political party has to bring in a list, that reflects 50-50 representation. But then the willpower, do people want to do that? Do the political parties want to do that? This is why I said, as the CCC, this is something, that you'll see in the future, that, in 2023, it's just next year, you'll see that our lists will reflect what we've been doing. Yes, please do.
But Linda, do people understand the Constitution and its provisions in this country?
They don't. People do not observe the Constitution as supreme law of this land. People don't even understand that anything that is against the Constitution is illegal. And right now, if I would want to play the advocates, the devil's advocate, I would go and sue Parliament. It is not gender balanced. I would go and sue Cabinet. I would go and even sue the executive, because it is ultra vires Section 17 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. But what we have as a compromised judiciary system as well, which does not interrogate the violations of the Constitution. That is why it is important for us to be able to have an electoral amendment to move from the Westminster system that we adopted from the Smith regime. And if we adopt the PRS system, we will totally be abolishing the wards, the constituencies. Like in South Africa, you don't go and vote for a particular ward. You just vote for councillors. And when those councillors go into council, they are pushing developmental issues for the whole local authority area to ensure that there is quality service delivery. And I think that is what we need right now. When we look at the parliamentarians, they are pushing for national legislative agendas that resonate with a national, shared common national vision. They're not looking at saying, and I think if we move to a PRS system, we'll be able to deal decisively with the toxicity and polarity issue in this country. And we'll also be able to have our president being elected in parliament by those who made it to parliament. And it will help us to have 50-50 gender representation, which we want. Why I say that the Westminster system will never give us 50-50 gender representation is you can have a gender balanced people nominated at nomination court, but that will not give us the outcome that we want or the actual votes. People can actually go and vote for the male candidates, and we'll continue having a parliament maybe that is not balanced, or a council that is not balanced. What we need to do at the end of the day is to just seriously consider moving over to the PRS system like the Senate, and ensure that we will have a gender balanced list, have a framework. For example, in South Africa, they'll tell you that in your list, we want trade unionists, we want engineers, we want health professionals, etc., so that we'll be able to have a variety of technical experts who will be holding parliamentary positions. I've always given an example of how our local authorities always have a person with no health background running the health portfolio. What will be that person doing? What do they even understand? I think that is why the state of our local clinics is dire. Because we always have people who do not even understand the portfolio that they'll be chairing maybe in parliament. In parliament, maybe we've been blessed to have had doctors who will be in parliament. But it is important for us to be able to have people with professions, people with academic qualifications in certain expertise area being on those PR lists for council, for parliament, so that they'll be able to influence policy from an academic knowledge point of view.
Amazing, but you just contradicted yourself a bit.
No, I didn't contradict myself. I'm also going back to that. That was a unique setup, right? I gave an example of a farming community. honestly, Blessed and Kudzai, I can't go and stand to be a councillor in Mazoe. I don't know the things that are affecting people in Mazoe. Because we should also understand that in certain areas, like in Mazoe, it's a citrus farming area, they've got their own issues, and a person who works there understands the area and the development that is needed in that particular area. I might come with my degree in psychology and say I want to be a councillor in Mazoe, but what will I change in Mazoe when I do not reside in Mazoe and do not understand the things that need to be done in Mazoe? They know the trees that are supposed to be planted in Mazoe and the development that is needed there. Look at the quality of oranges that is now coming out of Mazoe and compare them with the quality of oranges that we used to eat when we were growing up. They are different. Because we now have people who never did orange farming who are now farming the oranges that are supposed to be exported in Zimbabwe. So we need to be able to look at these things considering the area, what we want to do in that particular area, and who will be best suited to represent people in that particular area. We need everyone. We need the organic intellectuals. We need the academia. We need the bus drivers to be able to deal with the transport situation. We need everyone. We need to inculcate the spirit of not leaving anyone behind and having everyone on the table to be able to influence policy in that particular area.
But you have had an experience of sitting in council. You still sit in council. Would you necessarily need, say, a medical expert to be a chairperson of the health portfolio or stuff like that? As an experience, although this is not provided for constitutionally, is it not?
I don't think it's necessary because what happens when councillors come in and they're fresh from an election is they go through inductions, for every aspect of council. And also, they're guided by the Urban Councils Act. They're provided by certain acts, various acts, that, they are then inducted on. Councillors are all about policy formulation. We've got the technical aspect that then comes in and complements the policies that we implement, that we enforce. It's not really critical because there's so many professions that can come through council and will struggle. So there has to be a balance of the two. There has to be the professional, there has to be the community leaders, coming through. We've got people from the communities that, for an example, there's a councillor from Bade, her community loves her and they have been, voting for her for the past 15 years. Just because she's a grounded leader, But then you've also then got intellect, that only managed to be elected once because they've got no communication with the, and any relationship with their community. So you see that there has to be a balance of the two at any given moment. It can never be, this or that.
But I want us to zero in, on the Constitution. What do you think can be done, or what is your suggestion to ensure that people begin to appreciate the Constitution to begin with, and then they use it to be able to achieve a better Zimbabwe?
Well, I think the generality of Zimbabweans think the Constitution is for politicians. They've got no relationship, they've got no ownership with the Constitution. I think a lot of awareness has to be done. A lot of breaking down of the Constitution into layman's terms needs to be done so that, the ordinary person can be able to articulate the issues that are in the Constitution, be able to also demand for their own rights. People don't know their rights, starting off from something as basic as that. People don't even know their rights. They fear to speak out, because they know that the persecutions happen. We've seen that over the years, that, if someone speaks up against, a certain violation, the government comes hard on them. We've seen the nurses, demanding, better salaries and better working conditions. But then you see the government then comes, and crushes them. So we need to have a buy-in of, the citizens of Zimbabwe so that they take ownership of the Constitution. But as for now, Chimichema politicians.
Linda, like she says, the government has at times crushed those who take a stand on constitutionalism. We saw this happening with Namatai Kweza when she stood up and said people should not touch our constitution. She spent days in cells and has been in and out of court. You know, and we have seen also you being arrested as you tried to take your constitutional stand. What is it that we can do to ensure that people's rights are protected as designed and guaranteed by the Constitution?
The white man once said, if you want to hide something for the black African person, put it in a book.
So we should make our constitution being sung by Winky D.
What I want to articulate here is that Zimbabweans don't love reading. They don't. Even if we go and supply copies of the Constitution to every household, they'll just pack it away. What we need is for civic society to come up with constitutional awareness programs on the radio, on the TV, and ensure that they are ongoing until people understand just their basic rights and the importance of constitutionalism. I am attacked day and night for my constitutionalism stance, and I'm even told on Avajki constitution are nabasa. So we actually have a lot of work to do to inform people about the importance of the Constitution. And I also feel that in our curriculum, our education curriculum, we should start teaching constitutionalism, even at ECD, starting with just those basic children's rights and cascading the level of knowledge as we go up. And even have a constitutionalism module at every tertiary institution. That is the only way we'll be able to have people who are informed, people who value their constitution, people who stand up for their rights at whatever cost. But unfortunately, we also have a political system that doesn't want people to know their rights because they're afraid that they can actually rise against them. So it is imperative for civic society, political actors to also be able to teach their followers the fundamentals of adhering to the Constitution. But unfortunately, because of our insatiable appetite for power, we are even afraid to let our own followers know a party constitution because we'll be saying, we have a political system in this country that thrives on Gujanyirira, even at intra-party level. So what we need are new leaders that are constitutionally astute, who want to impart the constitutional knowledge they have to their followers so that we can have a constitutionally awoke people who can stand and demand their rights at a constitutional level. I don't know how many cases I've taken to the Constitutional Court, and most of them will be booted out because I don't even have support of the people, even if the issue is supporting every Zimbabwean, because people don't understand the constitutional fundamentals. So we've got a long way to go, and we need everyone partnering in this constitutional agenda to create a new Zimbabwean, a new man, a new mindset that understands that we will not be able to transform this country as long as we are not adhering to the tenets of the Constitution.
Yeah, on that note, how important is it if we are going to develop as a nation that is the Constitution, rather? How important is the Constitution if we're going to become a developed nation?
The Constitution is very important. Everything that we cry about that is not going on right is right there embedded in the Constitution and the prescription thereof. What we just don't have are follow-up laws. Like we are working with other women's organizations to have the gender equality law in place. We wrote to the cabinet with our points on what we expect to be in the gender equality law, and it is going to be presented as a gender equality act in parliament soon. And we need more people doing this on certain provisions of the Constitution that do not have follow-up acts of law in parliament. We need that to influence even the Criminal Codification Act, the punitive measures that we need on everyone who violates the Constitution. But if everyone is just crying that the Constitution is not being followed without also pushing for the legal acts that they want to be in place, we'll be just doing a great injustice and disservice to the change that we want to see, change that is tangible, change that can actually transform livelihoods.
And the same question to you. I mean, you just come in. How important is the Constitution for our people if we are going to be a better people?
It is very important because that is the only way we can achieve a free and fair Zimbabwe. That is the only way we can achieve a Zimbabwe that we want. It is the only way that we can achieve gender equality. It is the only way that we can remove the patriarchal system, in Zimbabwe. It is the only way that we can capacitate, our young women, our young men. It is the only way that we can protect our children, so it is very important. And everyone needs to come, on board, and advocate, for, the implementation of the Constitution, the respect of the Constitution, without fear or favor.
Amazing. Now, we have just run out of time, but I will allow you, Linda, to do your closing submissions on this discussion, and I'll come to you, Madam Kosi.
There is nothing for women without women. It is time for a women's revolution, for women to be able to stand together and ensure that Section 17 of the Constitution becomes a reality. We can do this and create a better future for our children, where they'll be respected in their communities, where they'll be respected at the workplace, where they'll be respected at the tertiary institutions, and where they'll be respected in parliament, in council, and in all organs of the state, if we unite for a cause, which is a woman's cause. Nekuti mwana anotamba na mai vake, kana mai vasiri empowered, mwana hana wekutamba naye.
I just want to speak out to my fellow sisters that, power is taken, it's never given. We have to move away from being crybabies and expecting, scraps of, and crumbs from, the big boys' table, to fall into our plates. This is the time for us to grab what is ours, to take ownership of what we deserve and, move forward, and lead Zimbabwe, to be the Zimbabwe that we want.
We lead. What is said is that we have seen attempts, in other way, successful attempts to change the Constitution when we have not even implemented most of it, when we have not even done what matters, what needs to be done. There's an appetite to change the Constitution to suit or preserve power for a few individuals, and not to implement the Constitution for the betterment and for the improvement of Zimbabwe's national spaces. And this is very sad, in my view, and from my standpoint. Now, we need to ensure that we are a country with direction, we are a country with vision. And that vision was put together by all Zimbabweans who voted in 2013 that this is the Constitution that we want. These are the provisions that will take us to a better and next level. Let us implement the Constitution and see if it works first before we start tinkering with it. We've already tinkered with it. Just less than 10 years, we've changed the Constitution, and it's quite sad. The Constitution is for Zimbabweans and not for political leaders. Let us all endeavor to read it, hear what it says, and have it implemented. Let it defend us and our rights. Now, this program was proudly brought to you in proud partnership with We Lead, an organization led by young women of Zimbabwe who believe that constitutionalism, the Constitution, is the pathway for development, here on HSTV in proud partnership with We Lead. And I, your host, as usual, Dara Blessed Mhlanga. Thank you very much for choosing us as your station of choice. Thank you very much for supporting us, and thank you very much for being part of the journey here that we've had at Heart and Soul HSTV. We have brought you the biggest political debates the discussions that matter. We are an alternative voice. We thank you, Global Holdings, for bringing us this amazing branding to our shows. Thank you so much, and we wish you the best in all you do, and thank you very much for your support. Until next time, thank you to my lovely guests.
You're welcome.
Thank you.